Hello everyone, welcome to our learning series of how to use Unreal Engine for architectural visualization. In this video, we're gonna create an interactive widget that we're gonna attach to one of the motion controller inside our VR pawn to enable the viewer of this presentation to achieve some of the interaction that we have set up inside our project example here, such as the canopy options that we have established using the variant manager, and also to switch, for example, to one of the pawn characters. In our example here, it's the Arch-viz character. So to do that, we need to start building a widget that we gonna attach later on in this video to one of the motion controller. So I'm gonna right click and create a widget, and we're gonna name this VR motion controller. So inside this widget, we're gonna create the canvas using the custom size setup, because basically we're gonna create a basic size of this layout of this widget that will enable us to assign it on the motion controller without having to worry about the screen size of that canvas. So this is very useful when you want to use it, for example, even inside your 3D scene, if you want to pull and put the widget inside the scene. So let's see how this is gonna go with our example here. So I'm gonna put the width and height, let's say for example 300 by 300, and I'm gonna drag one of the images just to put it as a base on our example here. So I'm gonna use this gray color and make sure that I'm gonna use it to fill the widget space, and I'm gonna drag a button inside here. So let's say for example we wanna set up a basic layout of these canopy options, let's say 3 buttons, and then on the next row we're gonna set up the button for the character. So let's minimize the size a little bit, let's say for example 90 by 30, and let's change the color a little bit, let's say for example at this blue level, and inherit the same on the hovered. So I'm gonna paste the same color, maybe darken it a little bit, so when we hover over it, it will show us that it has been affected by the widget that we're gonna create. Next, we're gonna drag a text and put it inside the button, minimize the size of this text, let's say for example around 12, and let's name this for example option 1. So let's make sure that the text is a child of the button, so it will be inside it. Let's bring the opacity a little bit down. So for the background image, I'm gonna put it like 0.65, and also for the button, let's bring the alpha a little bit down. That's 0.6. Maybe also for the text, and 0.5 for example, or make it 0.8. Okay, so this is the button that will represent option 1 of the canopy. So we're gonna copy this and paste, and let's just put it here. It's gonna represent option 02, and for the text we're gonna adjust only number, another one. So let's push this a little bit here, and this one also, so we can have a little bit arrangement. This one just to make sure that it's filled the whole thing. Okay, so this is okay for now, and let's make sure that this is option 03, so it will not confuse us when we set up the function of this one. Okay, so I'm gonna choose all of these buttons, bring them down a little bit, and then I bring a text here. Let's name this canopy options. Sorry. And bring the size to 12, for example. Okay, so let's bring it here. Maybe just bring the alpha a little bit down. 8. Okay, so I'm gonna make also a copy of this text, and I'm gonna assign for this, for example, let's say bound options or bound variables. Problem DS, I guess. Okay, so we're gonna also copy one of these buttons, and let's name this character, and for the text, just to make sure it's the Arch-viz. Okay, so this is the basic layout of the widget that we're gonna see once we attach it to one of the motion controller. Now the next thing we're gonna do is to set up the functions of these buttons. So we have done this earlier when we start to create the variant manager function inside our widget. So again, the same thing, the event construct get all actors of class, and let's call this level variant set actor, and let's get a copy. So to make this a little bit easier, promote to a variable. Let's name this just basic thing, just variant set, and let's connect these together. And we're gonna drag from this, switch variant by name, and we're gonna connect actually the buttons. So we need to make sure that we get the correct names of the variables here. So this is canopy, canop, and for the variant name, the first one is option 01 without any capital letter. We have to make sure that we get the same name as we have in our variant set. So I'm gonna duplicate this, name this S2, and also here, and name this as 3. And for the buttons, once we press on button 1, 2, and 3, let's drag them all here. Sorry about that. So we're gonna connect also set of the variables and connect the buttons. Okay. Next, we're gonna do also the same thing for the character, the same way we have done before. So when the viewer of this presentation, when we click this button, it should possess the Arch-viz character. So we're gonna on click, we're gonna get also all actor of class, and we're gonna get our Arch-viz character, which is this one, I believe. So we're gonna get a copy of this also, and then let's just get a little bit of space here, and then we're gonna want to possess this character. So if we don't see it, just click on the context sensitive. So now we can possess this character, but make sure that we get player controller. And the last thing we need to do is, once we switch to the Arch-viz character, we need to disable the HMD, the VR headset. So we're gonna just call the enable HMD and make sure that we do not tick the enable, so it will be disabled once we switch. So now our widget is set up using the same method that we have, the same blueprints that we have set up before for the widget. And now we're gonna compile this, and now we're gonna go to our VR bound character and our scene here, and let's see how we're gonna attach this widget to the motion controller. So the first thing we're gonna need to do is to call this widget on one of the motion controller. So let's say, for example, I'm gonna choose the right controller, and I'm gonna add a component, and let's say our component is a widget. And once we have the widget, we're gonna call this widget, which I believe was the VR motion controller. Immediately we're gonna see our widget, but it's really out of scale and it's a little bit messed up. So we're gonna set up the size, the draw size, the same size that we have set up inside that widget. So just to make sure, let's drag it here. It's 300 by 300. So let's put it up like 300 by 300. And this is why, because if for example, if you keep playing with this size, you're gonna get a little bit messed up of the buttons location and the text. So to adjust the scale of this one, we're gonna scale it down from this the transformation parameters. So before that, I'm just gonna rotate it 180 degrees, so it will face the direction of the viewers. So let's say, for example, I'm gonna put this 0.1. I'm gonna press F to see that. So if we are looking, if we are looking at the motion controller, so I think we're gonna still need to decrease it a little bit. So let's say 0.06 by 0.06. For now, I believe it's okay, but we still actually can preview this and inside the VR. So I'm gonna compile this and see if we gonna be able to see it. Okay, so now if we hold our motion controller, as you can see now, we have our widget displayed on top of the motion controller. Now this can be adjusted based on your art judgment on how to design it, how to make it more visible. But for now, we just need to see how we're gonna achieve the process. Okay. So the next thing we need to do is to set up a pointer that will enable us to choose one of these buttons. And we can achieve this using something called a widget interaction that we're gonna add it to the other motion controller. So I'm gonna call a widget interaction, and we have to make sure that these the widget and the widget interaction are childs of the motion controller, so they can be displayed. So our widget interaction is basically can be represented, or as it seems, it's represented by, let's say, a laser path that can show us where we are targeting, or where we are pointing exactly. So let's change the color to something a little bit like that. And something that you will notice once we play this is that it's a little bit big, so it I mean, the scale is a little bit huge in terms of if we target this on the buttons, it will cover the whole thing. So again, we can change also the scale over here, and I think this can be enough for now. And the interaction distance will control where exactly how far your let's say the debug actually can reach. So I'm gonna put to 700, and let's see now if we play this, we have to be able to see that laser shown on the other motion control. So it is not visible, and I believe this is because we need to enable show debug. So sorry about that. Let's go again. And now, as you can see, we have our the debug, or we can say it, for example, any kind of a pointer or a laser pointer that will help us to reach to this widget. Okay, so now we have our widget on top of the one of the motion controllers and the widget interaction. The next thing we need to set up is achieving the interaction of this widget debug when it hit these buttons, to enable that button to start achieving the function it was supposed to do. Okay, so to do that, we first need to set up an input to our function. So I'm gonna go to the project setting that we're gonna call later inside the bone itself. So inside the input, I'm gonna add another two action mapping. So the first one, let's say for example this is the widget pointer, and basically we're gonna assign, let's say for example let's see oculus, so we're gonna see one of these. If we are holding the widget, if we can see the widget on the right motion controller, so basically we need to set up this for the left one. So yeah, so the oculus touch, let's say for example X. I'm gonna add also sorry about this, not this one, we're gonna add another action mapping, so widget pointer, and the other one will be widget interaction. And let's call oculus let's say for example the Y. Okay, so we have these two functions or actions that we're gonna call it inside our bound event graph. Okay, so we're gonna call first the widget pointer, so I'm gonna call the widget pointer action, and we're gonna need to use the widget interaction and get from this widget interaction show debug. So we're gonna set this show debug, so when we press on the assigned button for the motion controller, we need this debug or the pointer to be visible. And I'm gonna duplicate this, and once we release the button we don't want to see that debug. Okay, so to be able to see this, we just first need to disable show debug from our debugging properties, so we can see if this is now applicable inside our motion controller. So I'm gonna hit preview again. I'm gonna hit pull the, so this is the button that we have assigned. As you can see, once I press it, we can see now that it's active. Once I release it, it's get invisible. Okay, so the next thing is the function. So to call the function, I'm gonna call widget interaction, and this should be the action event. Okay, so again we're gonna call the widget interaction, and we're gonna get from that, let's say from the pressed or from the widget itself, press pointer key. So when we press on the pointer key, we're gonna simulate an action that can be achieved by the left mouse button, but it's actually being activated using the motion controller. So inside the key, let's say for example we're gonna use the left mouse button. So again we are simulating this left mouse button using the motion controller button that we have assigned here. And so we're gonna get from the release also release pointer key. So this is gonna be same thing. So I'm gonna actually connect the widget also to the target here, and also left mouse button. So what is happening here, once we activate the function, the motion controller will simulate this action. And before doing this, make sure that you go to the base of the VR bound set, or you can actually go just easily to the class default, and make sure that the auto receive input is from our player 0, which is represented by the VR palm. So we're gonna see how this is gonna go, and let's hit preview and hold down the motion controller. If I press now on the laser target or the debug, if I click on the other button, this is basically option 1, this is option 2, as you can see. Let me teleport a little bit closer here. So if I'm looking here, option 3, again option 1, and now we can have different interaction buttons assigned to this widget to achieve a more interactive wave this. So if we hit on the Arch-viz character, we are gonna see like the screen will freeze a little bit, and we should go back to our character now. So here we are now back to our Arch-viz character, and we can continue our presentation after we have left the VR by disabling the HMD blueprint button that we added to the player possess option. So basically we can also add let's say a button, assign a button on the keyboard to bring back the widgets that we have earlier to continue the experience. So basically this is how you can add a widget assigned to your VR motion controller, and this is going to be always subjective to your artistic point of view on how you want to design this widget, and how you want to design, for example, or if you want to add, let's say for example, some animations that if you press on one of the motion controller buttons, it will bring the widget into visible inside the experience, and a lots of other stuff connected to the design process. And so this is just the basic idea that can be developed from your side, and hopefully it was clear enough. And again, if you have any question, please share it on the comments below, and hopefully on the next video we're gonna create the drone or the flying pawn that will enable also the viewer to fly around the project and have a little bit have a look on the project from a higher point of view. Okay, so thank you very much for watching this, and see you in the next video.